Hello, everyone, and welcome to Steel Sharpens Steel. I'm Tom Cunningham.
I'm Jermaine Taylor. Hey, everybody.
Hey, you will notice that this is an XYXY chromosome episode.
Yes, it is.
we do not have the lovely Joy Stevens with us this week. And so there was just too much going on. And Jermaine, fortunately, at first, I thought I might have to do kind of like a solo thing. But then Jermaine was like, he cleared the decks.
Save the day.
He made it here. And there's just so much to talk about that we didn't want to skip this week in particular, just because by the time next week happens, the government may be shut down. And who wants that? So we have a big show. Welcome to Mark Stepney. Of course, Anthony Turner, no big surprise. First person in the comments. And hello, gentlemen. Another week that has us on a ride. Bro, we are not even to Friday. And the crazy thing for me about all of this is that we are in a time when a deal on the budget could be struck.
Yeah.
There are enough votes in the House, bipartisan legislation side. There are enough votes in the House to get it done. There are certainly enough votes in the Senate to get it done. Bipartisan, both houses. We could have a budget. We could have been done a budget in 5 minutes because the framework was already there.
Yeah, a deal was made.
A deal had been struck, and we should have been able to walk it through. The Freedom Caucus, which I've done some research. I thought it was more than it was. Apparently, it's only about like 8 to 10 people who may be loosely affiliate with the Freedom Caucus. But basically, they said, well, you've got to start this Biden impeachment inquiry or we won't play ball. And so he did. And then they still aren't playing ball. And at the end of the day, they're going to threaten to remove him or to call a vote on the speakership if he goes through and pushes through bipartisan legislation on the budget. It's still technically possible to happen. But he is not showing any stones. And so it's likely that we're going to be shut down. Marjorie Taylor Greene made a super petty amendment.
Oh my God! Did you
dropping the salary? Go ahead, Jermaine. You take it because you know about it.
I got upset because it echoed a lot of racial undertones, especially with regards to what is our chief military guy's name, the brother?
Oh, the new guy is CQ, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Yeah,
but this is the defense secretary. No, it's the defense secretary. It's not
defense
him.
secretary. What's his name?
He's also black, by the way.
Yeah. She proposed that his salary be reduced to $1.
Right. Because he's failing.
Yeah, because he's exactly. It's a lot of posturing. From what I'm getting is the Donald is pretty much pulling all the damn puppet strings with this. And this is overflowing into the House.
Oh, yeah.
And I had no idea that they had that. And I guess I just haven't been paying attention because I just didn't think they were that strong in number. But you can probably answer this. Is McCarthy that spineless? Is he that scared of losing his speakership? Or is it that they have that much power? Like, I don't know the dynamics and why he's so willing to cower to their demands. I thought he had a lot more strength than what he's showing.
This is what he did in order to get over because, it took 15 votes.
Yeah.
In order to get over the hump, he basically put a line in the rules saying that a member could call for a vote of no confidence basically at any time.
Right.
So typically it takes a lot to get a speaker removed. But in order for him to become speaker, he set it up so that anybody in that goofball caucus could say, we want to remove him. Now, there's nobody to replace him.
Right.
So that's the other thing that he's playing this game. Well, we're going to do a vote. I don't think the rest of the House would vote to remove him.
That's what I'm saying.
They could call for it.
Yeah.
But I don't think they would have those 8 don't control enough votes to do it. And so he's just the bigger part of it. And you said it, Trump pulling the strings. Trump wanted them to defund Jack Smith.
Right.
Because Jack Smith has him on 2 cases. And then he said, we'll force a shutdown. So he was a McCarthy ally. And then he moved away from being a McCarthy ally because he wants a shutdown, he wants the chaos, and he wants the budget defunded. I think he thinks in a shutdown, Jack Smith would be on a hard stop. And so if he can use that to delay his trials under Jack Smith, then that would be a net positive for him. But I don't know how many people in the GOP actually have the stomach for it. We know that Matt Gaetz is an idiot, and Matt Gaetz thinks it's a winning thing. We know that Marjorie Taylor Greene is an idiot, and Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks it's a good thing. But there aren't very many, especially those who were elected in Biden districts, who feel like this is a good idea. And in the interim, they're running this whole BS impeachment inquiry, and they had this guy who is just absolutely pathetic. One of their biggest witnesses said, at present, we don't have enough proof to do anything. That's a GOP person. One of their witnesses got on the stand and said they don't have enough to go on right now to even approach a real impeachment, much less high crimes and misdemeanors, which could actually be voted on. And you're not going to have the Biden 12 or whatever.
But that's why it went to committee, because there was nothing of
right. There wasn't. Yeah, they didn't even have enough votes to actually open an inquiry.
Right.
So
exactly.
we threw it to committee to do it that way. So what we have is a circumstance in which Trump wants a Biden impeachment inquiry, so Trump gets a Biden impeachment inquiry. Trump wants a shutdown, so Trump gets a shutdown. But you had a guy today who was talking about all this evidence. He put a post up saying that in 2017, Joe Biden did X. And so a reporter said, well, in 2017, Joe Biden was not vice president.
Exactly.
And Joe Biden was just a public citizen.
Yes.
And he says, well, he was a nominee. And it's like, he wasn't a nominee in 2017. No. In 2017, it was Trump's first year in office. There were no nominees for any other offices because it wasn't an election cycle.
Yeah.
Well, you just don't agree with what station are you from? And he said NBC. Well, you just don't agree with us. It's like, no. I'm just asking you to clarify, because you're saying in 2017 this happened, and then you're saying in 2020 this happened. In 2020, Biden was not the president, and Bill Barr was the AG. So
and didn't think it was worthy to look into, even if there was something.
What power are you alleging that Joe Biden was wielding in these two instances, since this is what you are proffering as a statement of his criminal activity? Well, I'm just going to take another question. He looked like an absolute idiot. They eviscerated him on Morning Joe. It was actually quite an enjoyable piece of tape to watch. So
they have some really hard lines in their proposal. Like, I know one of the bigger things is reducing a great significant of the funding to Ukraine.
Right.
And then they had this very hard right immigration policy, which I don't know the details of, but whatever it is, the Democrats aren't on board with it. And
well, they keep talking about fentanyl coming over the southern border, and Matt Gaetz from Florida. There is no southern border in Florida. But all of these, and Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't share a southern border with Mexico. But all of these people are using these buzzwords, and 100,000 fentanyl deaths. By the way, Black folks are not the ones with the preponderance of fentanyl deaths.
No, they're not.
Put that together in your head.
Yeah, we didn't have this same outcry when we were dying of crack cocaine.
Yeah, the crack epidemic.
Yeah.
Fentanyl is not that drug for Black folks.
No.
So maybe
so
that's
much
why
hypocrisy.
You're so concerned. Yeah, it's very interesting to see.
Yeah.
So that's just the very beginning. Tomorrow is Friday. If they don't get it, if they don't do an extension, if they can't hammer through an extension, which, maybe he would cobble together the votes to get just at least an extension through the first 2 weeks of October. Maybe he can get that done. Because like I say,
he's trying to deliver
on both sides.
I feel like he's trying to deliver some kind of bill at the 11th hour that he knows the Senate is not going to pass, so the onus can be on Schumer. I feel like he is. I feel like they're going to come up with something that, they're going to all be in cohorts with, but it won't be something that's going to be in favor with the Dems. So it's going to look as though the Dems rejected their last best offer.
But they don't have even any pending legislation. They filed this, they haven't turned anything over to the Senate.
No, they haven't?
No, they haven't turned anything over to the Senate. They were making amendments and they were putting some stuff together. But at the end of the day, it takes time to do everything. And sometimes it takes even longer to do stuff in the Senate. The senators on the Senate side are not looking for a bullshit proposal. The GOP senators are looking for something that can get done. And everybody knows they've been playing games. You're holding Biden impeachment inquiry things, sending congresspersons to do press conferences instead of hammering out something. They can try to posture and position all they want, but at the end of the day, they're not putting anything forward that's serious, and they're violating the very terms of the agreement that they set when they talked to Biden to get us even to this extension point. So it's not, they can say what they want. They can try to spin however they want to spin, but the people whose checks are going to be cut off because the old, the impoverished, the people who need their money.
These IRS people, these government workers. My brother works for the FDA. The ripple effect of a shutdown, and I had no idea until my brother actually got in government. He works for the FDA. And he's saying, you're going to see like even emptier shelves as a result of things not being
because things can't get approved.
Inspected. Exactly. Right. And it didn't get to that point, but it could have had it gone just a little bit longer the last time there was a government shutdown. They're proposing this 8% slash in federal funding that even the Republicans aren't on board with. You have to know that it's something extreme when you have McConnell siding with Biden in this. What is it? And I guess, and they're all about, curtailing government spending. But what is it at the heart of this bill that they're trying to like make the point of besides the Ukraine and the hard right thing? Like, is it more so pulling funding away from the Jack Smith trial? Like, what is the main goal of this? Because I'm not getting it. I just see a lot of
nihilism.
Okay.
That's all it is.
All right.
Some people just want to watch the world burn. I mean, Mitch McConnell can't afford those cuts because he needs to have funding for the Energizer bunny batteries that keep his operating system up to date. So, the bottom line is the Freedom Caucus is anything but, and they don't care about anything. They literally don't care about anything except making mischief and yelling and being on TV. Marjorie Taylor Greene is still auditioning to be Trump's vice president.
Yeah.
And all they want is to see how much they can cause, how much drama they can cause, how much damage they can cause. And they don't realize that they're also damaging their own constituents.
That's the part.
They think welfare is just Black people. Oh, we don't care. It's plenty of your voters, especially in the South, who rely on these benefits. You
Subsidies.
are screwing them over.
Yeah. Exactly. And I'm not even talking about, I'm talking about like subsidies. People who get like,
it's everything.
Yeah.
Everything that is non-essential. And so that's a lot. I mean, air traffic controllers are okay. But, there's a lot of people who are going to be experiencing a lot of pain. And one thing that definitely needs to pass is that the Congress doesn't get paid. Let the Congress.
That's what I'm saying. Has there ever been real reform or proposal that they would even be affected if there was a government shutdown?
There was.
That would move the needle.
Yeah, obviously a Democrat proposed that amendment. It probably didn't pass just because the Democrats don't have the majority, and that's a simple majority House. So, it just shows how cowardly they are. There was another piece of a video I saw where a Democratic person said, raise your hand if you feel that Hunter Biden and Donald Trump, if found guilty, should face the consequences of their actions. All the Democrats raised their hands. None of the GOP raised their hands.
Sure.
Because they can't say they want Donald Trump to face it. And so he says, I think it's disgusting that the GOP won't accept that there is a rule of law for every American and that everybody has to abide by the rule of law. And so this is where we end up. We end up in a situation where they are hypocritical and craven and disgusting, and not doing what they need to do in order to just run the country. First of all, they're trying to grind the country to a halt. But second of all, they just are not doing their jobs. You're supposed to run the government. You're not supposed to not run the government. And, Trump piled on $7.8 trillion in debt. They don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
We borrowed at a time when interest rates were a lot lower. Now, within 2 years, the projection is that the interest on the debt is going to be larger than the budget for the military.
Are you serious?
In 2 years, the interest will be the largest segment of the federal budget, the interest on the debt we owe, because
so not even my nephews are going to be affected by this. We're going to be affected in paying for this.
Well, I mean, we're going to be affected by it because they're going to have to increase taxes again. They're just going to have to. There's no way you can continue to do this. So, but we've been on Trump for a while. I want to go to a different thing before we, just in the interest of fairness. I want to talk about this guy right here. So Bob Menendez is the senior senator from New Jersey.
Jersey.
I mean, he is being indicted, or has been indicted, on about the most Jerseyest thing you could Jersey. Just naked bribes, cash, gold bullion, cars, foreign relations, trading, all the influence peddling, all these sorts of things, which are so classically bada bing, bada boom.
It's so mafia-like. It seems to be his status quo of operating. In 2015, it was a hung jury that he got off on because he was accepting campaign contributions, we should say, in exchange for this ophthalmologist who needed help on their Medicare billing and disputing them. So he was kind of like muddying up the waters with that. And I guess he got lucky where it was hung, or maybe somebody was influenced. I feel like that's more so what it would have been. It was sort of orchestrated that it would be a hung jury. But, it's always been my notion, the more you do things and you get away with it, you continue to do things and get away with it. So I feel like it's pretty much status quo. What I find interesting is the response from the Republicans, because they're very tepid. They don't want to say that he should resign. They don't want to say anything.
Nope.
I guess because they pivot to, George Santos.
Right.
I feel like they want to keep it going because they need something to dangle in response to what's going on the Republican side. So they just want to keep it open so they can say, well, if you got that, we got this. But it gives me pause when Schumer is somewhat tepid and somewhat resistant to calling him or asking him to resign. And I don't understand the psyche of that, because Schumer was quick to ask Al Franken to resign. But whereas Bob Menendez, he's a little bit more hesitant.
Well, so Gillibrand kind of carried a lot of that weight. What they were trying to parse is that a person who is indicted still has the presumption of innocence, and Franken was just under a scandal. There hadn't been any charges filed against him. It was just sexual harassment in the era of Me Too, the burgeoning, emerging Me Too thing, and things you shouldn't do, and things that can't be done, and this, that, and the other. And so it just looked really bad.
But he didn't get his stay in court, though, Tom.
There wasn't, because there were never any charges filed. That's the point. If charges are filed and you've been indicted, you are owed a day in court. Okay. This was just a messy scandal. And so it was all optics. It wasn't legal. She didn't file charges against him. There was no sexual harassment charge. There were no criminal charges. It was just, he did this to me and he's got to go. And the women senators, the female senators, kind of very quickly moved the ball. And in retrospect, he said, I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't, because I knew it was bullshit. Yeah. And I just never should have stepped down. Now, we're fast forward. Schumer actually, I think what's going to end up happening, because at first it was kind of like, it was a slow walk. It was like, let him do the such and such and such and such. But they have they have a Democratic governor.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're not going to get somebody.
Right. They're going to appoint another one.
Right.
But the things he's accused of doing, from what I'm reading, they could have been legally done had he not accepted any of the cash transactions for what he did.
Yeah, but when they go to your house, and I don't know where people keep gold bullion, like is the dining room table. Like, you don't have a safe underneath the Persian rug or anything.
But
like,
did you hear his
keep
reasoning
your
for
gold
keeping
out.
all of that? His reasoning was he went all the way back to his Cuban roots. I guess when you're in Cuba, you just have this really fear of the banks just seizing all of your
I get it.
assets.
That's a good lie. He's lived in this country for however
I'm
many
gonna
years.
say you're in
This
Jersey
ain't
now,
Cuba.
buddy.
And look, keep cash on hand, fine,
Yeah.
But the problem is that Auric Goldfinger in the movie Goldfinger, the classic James Bond Goldfinger, said one of the great things about gold is that you can always melt it down, convert it into whatever you want. It's untraceable.
Yeah.
But he had the little bullions with the serial numbers on it, and the serial numbers are tracked from the people who purchased and gave it to him.
It was sloppy.
Oh, it was so sloppy. You could have melted it into anything. You could have melted those little baby bars into one big bar.
Yeah.
What are you doing? It's just it's absolutely crazy, and it's so sloppy and messy, and he looks like a real idiot. And so if it does turn out that he resigns, Cory Booker, of course, his fellow senator from the state of New Jersey, the junior senator from New Jersey, finally said, no, it's time for you to go. You got to go. But it remains to be seen. Obviously, with Trump kind of playing out the whole thing, with Santos playing out the whole thing, it's not like there's a moral low ground here.
Right. And I think that's what he's holding on to in his defense.
It is.
Because I'm like, what the hell can you defend this with? And I feel like he's playing tit for tat,
No, he is. And look, you're caught, bro. Like, you had a good run.
Yeah.
It's time to step to the side. I mean, it just is. You don't need to be here anymore. And so
this happens more so than not, Tom. How can we as a country get to a point to where there is reform? Because it seems so easy. I mean, we're having this issue out here in LA with Karen Price, the Ridley Thomas guy. It's happening out here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I understand that, you feel like you're untouchable and it won't be traced, but almost always it catches up with them.
It does.
I guess I've never sat in that seat to where I would be so tempted to take such a huge amount of money to just look the other way on this particular issue. But how can we make this not a part of the norm? You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like we're going to be just like those dictator countries that just somewhat allows it and just understand it comes with the part of being a politician. I don't ever want that to be a part of our fabric in our governing society.
Well, I think what entrenched people start to think is that I'm doing this because this is a constituent, and this constituent has the interests of the community in hand. That's the sort of mental gymnastics that you start to run in your own head. This isn't hurting anyone. This is a guy who's my constituent, and he needs something. This is a guy from Egypt, and he needs this massaged, and there's no reason this shouldn't be massaged. And look, if he's willing to help me out on my campaign or help me out with this, that, and the third, no harm, no foul, nobody gets hurt. It's just that this thing happens. And once you've started down that path, it's like with anything with a behavior that is morally corrupt. Once you started, it just becomes easier and easier to keep it going, because you did it once, you weren't caught. And as you say, 2015, that's 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And you were able to dodge that bullet. You think you just chill.
Yeah.
But
that behavior, it's like, I feel like they need language and a hard definition as to what they can and cannot do. Years back, even our congresswoman out here, Maxine Waters, she was under fire. Mm-hmm. I want to say she set up some LLCs or some sort of corporations that her
husband had some banking interests that looked a little funky.
Exactly. And it hurt my heart to see it, but at the same time, I could understand why there would be some improprieties there. So I feel like there just needs to be some very definite language as to what these politicians can and cannot do, and so we can avoid these conversations.
Yeah, but the problem is that the language exists, but they're always trying to scooch around the language.
Yeah.
You can't, listen, if corrupt gonna corrupt. So, there is nothing in in your oath, they say you can't accept gifts over $25. You can't do this. You can't do that.
Right.
And they still find a way
Yeah.
to cheat
Yeah.
because it's what they want to do. So all I will say is that eventually what is done in the dark will come to light. and that's what we're finding out now.
Right.
Menendez is the latest person. It's a shame that he has to be a senator. It's a shame that he has to be representing the Democratic Party, which for at least a few fleeting moments had the moral high ground, because Trump is an absolute slug. But we're not there any longer. We've got to move away from the idea that Trump is going to be able to do anything other than what it is that he's doing. And fortunately, we have some things to talk about in an upcoming segment, just about how things are going in Trump world, which is not very great. But before we do that, Jermaine, you had a story that you wanted to talk about specifically this week, and it is about a small victory for Black women.
Indeed.
And this woman looks a lot like Aisha Tyler mixed with Portia Williams, as far as I'm concerned.
Arian Simone. Badass. Arian Simone.
Yeah,
she started this. I want to say right after, 2021. It's called Fearless Fun. She even had some of the help with some celebrities. Keisha Knight Pullman was actually part of the starter for this. We all know that when it comes to venture capitalism and Black people as a whole trying to get money from these huge corporations, it's just hard to. It's pretty much non-existent. Even smaller for Black women. It's just, it's less than like 0.1% that they get any funding for these venture capitalists to start their own small businesses. So what this woman did, she took all of these corporations up on these DEI pledges that they had during George Floyd and the racial reckoning. Everybody was like pledging to put all this money into these Black businesses, into the Black community, because we have to atone for all the things that we've done to this community of people. So she took them up on it. She went to, I want to say Wells Fargo, Home Depot, Citibank, Chase. And she said, listen, we have all these Black women entrepreneurs who are trying their best to get monies for their startup, to keep their businesses going. But we just can't get any funding from these traditional capitalists. They just won't do anything for us. They say, okay, this is the perfect time to do this. So they started pouring into these organizations. So what Fearless Fund does, they let these women apply to this particular organization. And they give them grants, they give them scholarships, they give them resources, they give them advice, how to keep these businesses going, how to keep them flourishing, how to even draw more customers. It's a really good effort. The catch is, it's specifically designed for women of color, Black women, but they open the tent a little bit, women of color. And then comes Edward Blum. Is that the brother's name? Who is Edward Blum?
Yeah, don't say brother.
Well, the white guy.
Don't get the audience confused.
Edward Blum. The same gentleman who had the restraints of the affirmative action cases, who took all the freaking rights of Black folks having an advantage of going to these colleges, the same white guy who was over that, he comes in and he's citing this whole Civil Rights Act of 1866, saying that because it's exclusively for women of color, it violates that particular, piece of legislation. So they were going to court. She was all worried about it, and they recruited the likes of what's our brother's name, Benjamin Crump.
Yep.
And some other high-profile lawyers. And Edward Blum and his lawyers, they sought to put an injunction to stop businesses as their everyday, day-to-day businesses. But this judge just on Monday said no, they can still continue. This thing will play out in the trials and the court system, no doubt. But this, to me, Tom, it really exposes the heart of what's really going on with the extreme right now. Mm-hmm. It's not about leveling the playing field. They are literally trying to take us back.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Education, they started already with the affirmative action being overruled. Again, not overruled, but just pretty much obliterated. So you can't get in on the merits of, just being a dark-skinned person. And now they're
wait, but let's rewind that a little bit, because I don't want to frame affirmative action in the way that you just bought into. Affirmative action is not getting in just on the basis of your skin color. The specific cases that were under review were that because neither Harvard nor I forget what the other institution was, but neither of them said preferential treatment. They said that your ethnicity, your skin color, whatever, could be used as part of a factor in your selection, not you're Black and so you get in. That was what the plaintiffs were trying to allege, but that wasn't the case. They were just saying that we, as an institution, a private institution, feel that there are other factors other than simple academic performance or this, that, and the third. And
Right.
race can be one of those factors that we can use and choose to include as we evaluate candidates. And so
I thought they wanted to exclude that altogether, though.
No, they did. That's
Okay.
what the affirmative action ruling has done.
Yeah.
But before it was struck down, that was what Harvard's position was. It was never Black people, Black skin trumps other things. It was just that your ethnicity could be used as one of the factors that
Right.
allowed us to make a decision. And so that's what this guy struck down. But go ahead.
Yeah, but my thing is, I feel like what they're doing now is trying to target, something, the lifeline of our community. Black folks are earning right now, and Black women are leading the charge. Black women have always been entrepreneurs. I don't know a Black woman in my family who hasn't always had a side hustle. They're just like, what they do. I mean, even this old woman in my freaking community used to sell burgers out of the back window of her house. I mean, they've always had a
Since
side
DJ
hustle.
Walker.
Exactly. So I feel like they're trying to cut, our lifeline. They're trying to pretty much, like, if they can't kill us literally, they're trying to kill what's inside of us. And that's what this particular initiative that Eric Blum and his conservative, cohorts are doing right now. And it stinks, to be honest with you. It really, really stinks. The judge pretty much said that, the argument that they proposed, during this injunction, it wasn't strong enough, because what else you got? So,
Right.
They can continue with everyday business, but it just begs to question, like, after this, what's going to be next?
Well, it's always tough. When I first saw that this guy was doing that, it incensed me.
Mhm.
But I'm glad to see these sort of little victories. The little victories sometimes are the only things that we can take with us. And so I was very heartened, and I'm glad that you brought it up in our chat so that we could address
Yeah.
it, because it is an important thing. And
Right.
I'm just really pleased that we have an opportunity to shine the spotlight on the good work that Simone is doing.
Right.
And shout out to Ben Crump, my Tallahassee friend from my time on the yard, for helping these women do what they need to do in order to manifest their dreams, their goals. And as you said, Jermaine, these women have been the backbone of the entrepreneurial spirit in the Black community.
They have.
And giving them these opportunities and access to these funds is an important part of what we need to do in order to continue that vibe. So that's great. Next up, oh boy.
What is it?
My heart was so glad.
Are we talking about New York?
Bro. Bro. OMG.
Yes, indeed.
So
go ahead.
So, the thing is, this case was set to start on Monday.
Yeah.
The trial. So the civil trial. This isn't a criminal trial. There were some thoughts that maybe they would do a criminal trial. Alvin Bragg went criminally on the hush money, payments thing, 34 counts, whatever. So they shifted this thing to civil trial. And among the things that are good about a civil trial versus a criminal trial is that preponderance of the evidence is the standard, as opposed to beyond reasonable doubt. And Tish James, like, literally had the receipts,
Yes,
literally had the tax returns and the filings, and then had the bank loan applications. And it's like, for tax purposes, you say it's worth 20 million. For loan purposes, you say it's worth 200 million. You're just playing fast and loose with the rules. And you got Trump out there saying, well, of course I did this. That's the smart way to do business. You know? And I say, you should not look at these. You should not pay attention to these valuations. You got to do your own due diligence and da-da-da-da-da. And the judge said, nah, you were just lying.
Yeah.
And not only were you just lying, but I have a finding that you were just lying. And this was a bench trial, so there was never going to be
no jury.
No jury anyway.
Yeah.
So before even the trial starts, he finds that he's at fault. And so Tish is smiling. Tish James, AG or DA, Tish James is smiling. And she's trying to move forward with a $250 million fine.
Yeah.
And the judge is like, yeah, we need to take a look at your business certificates because you shouldn't be able to do business in the state of New York anymore. And so, of course, the two Trump boys are all upset. Ivanka's already moved down to Florida. She's kicking it with Jared. And so she doesn't really care anymore. She's not a part of the business. But this is all these guys have. And so Trump Tower, all these other things that are in New York, it doesn't immediately call for the dissolution or the dissolving of all of these assets or anything of the type. It just says that you're not going to be able to do business in New York as a business. So maybe they're just going to run to Bedminster and kind of, convert some offices in Bedminster into the, the head of Trump org. But it's hugely embarrassing. And what he tried to do after this ruling came out, he wanted to delay the trial in the fraud.
Yeah.
And so it was scheduled to start on October 2nd. They very quickly rejected that the argument that it needed to be paused or withheld. And so it's moving ahead. And so again, anytime you're a plaintiff as stupid as Donald Trump, maybe he employs lawyers and lawyers are better than he is at kind of making the case. But anytime you have a client as stupid as Donald Trump and you attack the man who has to rule,
I know.
You doing like some extra dumb, like super duper extra dumb BS.
I think he feels like they're going to cower to the insults and to, all the things that he says about them. And he just doesn't understand that these people are built differently, dude. When you're
you can't do nan to me. I am in this job. You can't fire me from this job. You can't do nothing to get me out this job. All I'm going to do is look at the facts, and the fact pattern is undeniable. Right. Use a lie. Use a lie.
This particular trial to me, and I feel like it's going to have more of a psychological effect on him.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's already beginning to slip. We always talk about Joe Biden slipping mentally, but Trump is doing so as well. He really is. Clearly. And I feel like all this is just catching up with him. This man, and I was thinking, his whole entire pedigree is built on this myth of who he's created all these years. Mm-hmm. This inflated wealth that we've all thought at one point that he really had. He parlayed that into everything. Even into politics, when he parlayed it into Hollywood, it worked for it because, Hollywood is all about sensationalism and, la and what's really, land of make-believe. But I feel like now that people, if they're really paying attention, they know who he really is now. Mm-hmm. And because this is happening in a city to where he has pretty much not really begged. I mean, the Trump family in the very beginning of time, when they first got there, they were rejected by old money New York. They really, I mean, the Rockefellers and all them, they really didn't see the Trump family as a part of, the upper echelon of New York society. So when Trump finally bought his way in as best as he could, because I still feel like they think he's like small potatoes, a nouveau riche, he felt like he was just a part of it. But now they really, really know. And now that they know, the world knows. So I feel like this is going to do a lot to him more mentally because he can't even do business in the state of New York anymore. And that's been go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish.
He can't even do business in the state of New York anymore. So I feel like over time, or maybe even immediately, it's just going to begin to take its toll on him. This $250 million that he's liable for, do you think the grift is going to continue with his supporters and he's just going to start finding ways to fundraise that? Because I don't think he has it liquid cash to, pay that right now.
There are things that he has access to. Let's not let's not be confused. He does have access to capital. He could sell some things, but I think the bigger psychological impact is that once he's convicted of this, of being a fraud, it changes the calculation. You could always say, oh, it's unjust, but a conviction is different from an indictment. A conviction is different from an allegation. If it's found to be true, then it's found to be true. Now, from a public and social media standpoint, it's one judge. It wasn't a jury. It's just one judge rendering his judgment. But at the same time, the information is there. And if you're a loser, it's one thing. If you win, if you're found not guilty, if it's a hung jury, then you're a winner. But when you lose, just like the E. Jean Carroll, not only did he lose E. Jean Carroll in her civil trial, he's lost a second time now.
Yeah.
And so all of these things start to put dents in the invulnerability piece of his whole argument. And not that it's somebody was saying that because we didn't talk about the debate, but there's not really a whole lot to talk about in the debate. So we're not going to have a super long show just because of debate talk. But one of the things that is interesting, they said, if you combined the poll numbers of all 7 people who were in the debate yesterday into a single person, that person would still be 20 points behind Trump.
Wow.
That's how bad their field is. That is where they are in terms of their ability to drive interest in their organizations and their messaging. So it's not a great time to be a GOP candidate for the office of president. And there really isn't any, I mean, you figure, I think they're at 36% as an aggregate, as the gestalt of all 7 of them. Okay. So you're at like 5.5 points each on average. If you average that out, you know, maybe one's at 8 or 9. Maybe Nikki Haley is kind of at the top of the pack because at least she's trying to speak a little truth to power. And she, you know, had a few moments. I don't know what the hell Tim Scott was thinking last night.
Oh my God, Tim Scott! When I tell you, he tap danced for them all last night,
and attacking her over some drapes purchased in the Obama administration.
God,
and
I mean, about
why didn't you give them back?
Jesus Christ!
And then somebody said, "Well, any person can tell you if you have custom drapes made, you can't send them back 6 years later."
Yeah, I don't like how they even get to that. Vivek wasn't even as big of a sensation as he normally would be. He was a lot more combative from the clips that I've watched because I feel like they're taking him to task, especially Nikki Haley, because she's just so sick of the inconsistencies. That interview he did on MSNBC with the what was the Indian brother who's on there? I call everybody brother because I got this Cornel West thing going.
Yeah, you're talking about Ramaswamy.
Ramaswamy, but the guy who interviewed him, Mehdi Hassan.
Oh my gosh.
That interview pretty much exposed him for what he's really worth. And I don't think he's recovered since then because I feel like people are really, really taking note as to who Vivek is. They're not, and I thought they would do this more in this particular debate. They would pull away from Trump and really, really start to attack him. And there was a little bit of that. But I think because of what you just said, because they just have no freaking foot in the game as to even beating him, like, why bother? So I don't understand the intention of any of the actual candidates right now. Like, what is it they're actually gunning for? Is it a world post-Trump? Or is it the VP seat? Like, what is it the aim here? Because they're not going to get the nomination.
No. Well, there was a time when some people presumed that at least a few of them were auditioning to be his vice president.
Right.
But Trump made a speech to what he purported was a United Auto Workers audience. But the United Auto Workers audience was at a non-union shop
Yeah, they were.
And the president of the UAW was like, well, that's an interesting choice. If you're
And it
supposed
was
to
a
be supporting the
tight
union.
camera angle.
Oh, it was
They didn't
super
pan
tight
out.
because there weren't anybody there. And some of the reporters there they were holding things UAW for Trump, blah, blah, blah. And they're like,
Yeah.
so, which chapter of the union are you? Oh, I'm not actually.
I'm not in it. I don't even work for these people.
Yeah, I don't. No, I'm not an actual auto worker.
Ah.
So I'm just holding up signs, just like the white people wearing blacks for Trump's t-shirt.
Yeah.
So again, he says, if you don't elect me, the auto industry's gonna fail. It's gonna fail like nothing's ever failed before. Within 1 year, all the auto jobs are gonna be gone. So what you need to do is have your leaders endorse me. And then he gets this raucous shout from the crowd, but it's like, but you're not in the union. So.
Yeah.
That
he made those promises once before, and look at
and it didn't exactly work for Lordstown. Woo.
Yeah.
So it's lots of little things, and that along with thinking that Biden was going to push us into World War II, and that Jeb Bush started a war with Iraq, and that
needing ID for Wonder Bread
in 2016, and it's just there's a lot of man, woman, chair, TV, the things not quite cognitively there for him. And once some of these other dominoes start to fall on some of these cases, it's going to be a lot harder to make the case. And it's the GOP's own fault, because you pushed out moderates, you pushed out, John McCain, were he still here, would not be able to survive in today's GOP. Mitt Romney is leaving. And not that I really liked Mitt Romney. He had the cojones to vote for impeachment, but he's also saying that Joe Biden should be investigated. And he knows that's a crock of shit.
Yeah.
And nobody on the GOP side is saying anything about Jared Kushner and the $2 billion he got to manage a sovereign wealth fund when he has no experience doing that. And yes, technically, he got that money after he left his official position. But the things he was doing and the relationships he was building with the Saudis while he was in his administration position were because he was in his administration position.
Sure.
So you don't get to say, oh, I quit and then 2 weeks later I got $2 billion, so it's no harm, no foul. You were doing things for the Saudis while you were in office. Yeah. And this was retroactive pay, basically. So
do you ever wonder how much Trump profited in monetary value by being the president with these different countries? Like if Jared Kushner got $2 billion, Trump probably got mountains more than that.
It wasn't as clear cut, but there were plenty of hotel room spaces being rented and occupied by foreign powers. A lot of it was pushing the very bounds of emoluments. He was never brought up on emoluments, basically because he was bulletproof for most of his presidency, up until the impeachment, up until January 6th, which was the second impeachment. But that was when he was on the wrong side of his presidency. So, people renting out ballroom space and making contributions at 4 times the rate that the ballroom should normally go for.
Yeah.
All of these sorts of things. I don't think it was as naked as him getting $2 billion in cash. I think being president allowed him to put off creditors. It allowed him to do a lot of things that enabled his business to survive. And he definitely pumped up. He would routinely make stops when he was flying internationally. He would have planes that were transporting Secret Service and other folks stop at locations that were close to his properties.
Yeah.
So that, the refueling path and all this other sort of stuff
can always stay there, and thus he reap the profits from it. Yeah.
Exactly. Because for the overnight refueling, they'd have to stay at a Trump resort or whatever. I don't think it was that much. He certainly spent a lot of money flying down to Doral and to Mar-a-Lago and doing different things at his different properties. And so the federal government is paying money, a fair rate for his
What
Secret
was
Service
that
to
practice
occupy.
called, Tom? And there's a name for it. Like whenever you take an office, you have to put your assets into this particular.
Oh,
It's not.
blind trust.
Yeah, he
No, he
didn't
never
do
did
that.
that. No,
So
he didn't.
was that a law, or was that just pretty much custom that politicians do that whenever they assume office? Like,
If I'm not mistaken, and I don't know if any of my Sharpies can sharpen me up on this, there were a lot of things that happened after Richard Nixon's scandal.
mm-hmm.
And so I'm not sure when the blind trust practice began.
Okay.
But just like the reporting of your tax returns, that started post-Nixon.
Yeah.
I think the blind trust thing became a standard thing to go
Okay.
after Nixon because there were just all these different controversies and scandals and yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, he was flouting all of those things.
Yeah.
And so they didn't really ever.
Well, they couldn't enforce it because it wasn't law. It was just something tradition.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, Chan, I'm finally getting to you, Chan, on this because we were talking about the debate and what the folks in the debate are hoping, that they think that his legal issues are going to take him out of the race. And we've talked about that on the show, that yes, that's the only thing they can hope for. What they are not understanding, though, is that Trump's voters go with him.
They do.
They're not going to just transfer. They don't like you, DeSantis. They don't like you, Tim Scott, because they're racist. They don't like you, Nikki Haley, because you're a woman. They don't like you, Vivek, because you're brown. They don't like you, Pence, because you're a traitor.
It's Trump or bust.
You don't get those voters. And without
Yeah.
Trump voters, you can't take a 20% hit on voting.
Yeah.
You can't take a 25, almost 30% hit. That's why they're polling higher than you, because they are him. They're not Republicans. They're him-publicans. And those are the people who came into the party because of Trump, and they will recede from the party after Trump.
But
And
it's that very reasoning that I'm having this quandary about these Republican candidates that are. I'm like, who are they talking to? Are they talking to the moderates, the independents? Like, who is their target? Like, what are they? Their platform, their things that they want. Who are they pitching to? If we know that these Trump people are Trump or bust, and they go with him when he leaves. That's what I'm not getting right now.
At this point, they are not saying what they want to happen. Yeah. So they can't attack Trump because they're waiting for the inevitability of Trump to be pulled. There's a case right now seeking to remove Trump from the ballot.
Using that one amendment, yeah, right.
But one state is not standing in the way of the proceeding of the suit.
Yeah.
So they're hoping, if he can't appear on the ballot in Wisconsin, he can't win. Sure. And so the GOP, the RNC rather, will say, well, we can't have a candidate who can't appear on all of the ballots. And so you're just disqualified. Yeah. So it's been shown that you can't. And so you got to go. Or they're waiting for a miracle in Iowa or a miracle in New Hampshire where somebody else can end up on top. And so it's like, well, he's not the inevitable nominee. So now maybe we can look another way.
Yeah.
That's what they're hoping for, but they can't attack him. Chris Christie can attack him. Chris Christie is kind of attacking him. Ron DeSantis tried, but why aren't you here? Yeah. 7-8 trillion. Yeah. You should be here to defend. The public owns that. Not that you're a crook, not that you're a fraud. None of them said you threatened Mark Milley with
execution. Yeah.
None of those things. None of them saying, well, I know people are talking about Joe Biden, but Trump is only 3 years younger and he thinks we're going into World War II. None of them said that.
Yeah.
So they're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too, because they think, if I can just hold on.
Right.
But can you?
I just don't understand what they're holding on to or holding on for. That's the part that's just left me.
Well, they want to be president. That's why. Yeah. They just don't understand that it's not possible. It's not happening. There's Selena Meyer
after Trump is gone. Like, with the state of the party, do you see them recovering even in the next 8 years? Like, where do you propose they're going to be? Like, I feel like it's going to be this complete overhaul of them, and it's going to take them years to lose this stain, because a whole generation of voters, I don't see how easily you can forget this.
Consider this. after they got wiped out, because it didn't start with Trump. Let's be clear. It didn't start with Trump. It started with W. W was their first president in the modern era who didn't, after all the votes were counted, who didn't win.
Okay.
And he was not a smart guy, but he was a relatable guy. This is what we want. We want a guy we can drink a beer with. We don't want a guy who's highfalutin. We don't want a guy who talks down to us. We want a normal guy to be.
They want a folksy type of guy.
We want a folksy guy. And then 9/11 happened, and it was wrap George in the flag. Yeah. Nope, you can't say shit about him because, you know, we're under attack. And then it turned into the lies, the yellow cake lie, and the, you know, shaming Colin Powell into a lie and forcing us into the Iraq war and unfunded war and all this other sort of stuff, and then crashing the global economy. The reason we had a black president was because the white guy effed it up so badly that the entire world was about to melt down.
Right.
And so they saw that some of those issues, some of those social issues that they had been writing on weren't going to work anymore. And so during Obama's 2 terms, they trotted out compassionate conservatism. They tried to fix some things. Yeah. You put Michael Steele as a counterpunch to Obama. You've got the black president. We've got the black head of the RNC.
Yeah.
And that led us to 8 years of, some tough things, but a recovery from a global economic meltdown, some prosperous times, some very positive things happening. And because
it was a band-aid too on all of our social issues too, because what we did was we took everything that we're dealing with now in terms of, the racial heightening right now. That never went away. What we did with Obama, in my opinion, is we put this gauze over it, so it'll just be, medicated, pacified. And then once it was over and Trump came in, they're like, well, fuck this. We can't do it. We're going to rip this thing apart. And we're going to be who the hell we want to be because I don't want no damn black man being my freaking president. And that's basically what it was.
Well, what happened is that you had the guy that they thought could be a Republican standard bearer in McCain. They thought he was the guy to beat Obama, and he failed. And you thought the responsible Republican guy in Romney was the guy to beat Obama, and he failed. So then it's like, well, F it. To your point, they knew Obama wasn't running again, but then they saw it was Clinton. Well, who are we going to put up against Clinton? You're going to put the guy who will punch Clinton in the face.
Yeah.
And that was him. And he almost lost, would have lost, but they stacked the deck against her throughout those FBI investigations. It was just enough to get people to vote for Jill Stein, whatever. But they thought that Trump was the way. They thought Trump was Reagan. Reagan made the GOP. Remember, all during the reason George H.W. Bush got elected was because of Reagan. Reagan was supposed to be the person who turned into the 1,000-year reign of the GOP because everybody loved Reagan. And then in the aftermath, people saw that, well, there's some stuff that Reagan was doing that wasn't so kosher. And George H.W. Bush didn't have Reagan's charisma. And then there were, high gas prices, read my lips, no new taxes. And the taxes had to come back because George H.W. Bush is pragmatic and knows how things have to go. And then you got Clinton, and then you got W, and then you got Obama, and then you got Trump. So they went all in. The racists who loved the dog whistle language that Trump was not even whistling anymore. He was blaring in the trumpet, turning the speakers up to 11 and standing there and shouting
Reagan
it.
Plus that, exactly.
He unbound it.
Right.
Reagan was soft-spoken, and you could trust him because he sounded like your grandpa.
Yeah.
Donnie is hopped up on meth in a basement, blowing rails off a stripper and throwing everything but the N-word out. Yeah. And once that id became unchecked, you couldn't herd those cats back in.
Right.
You couldn't stop that dam from bursting. And so they said, this is what they want. This is what everybody wants. This is what America really is, until they found out that America really isn't that. And so now they're stuck with it.
Yeah. And as Black people, we easily And that's why we were initially turned off by Trump from the very beginning, because we understood who he was. But when we saw who he was, and we saw who our friends and who our people that we interacted, white people in our lives, were as a result of them liking him, I mean, that's pretty much why I have a white friend who always asks me, she goes, "What is it with your issue about Trump that you don't like?" And one day I was so scared, but I told her, I said, "It's because I feel like he says the things that you probably say behind my back. But because you like him, it makes me believe." I can't put it into words right now, but he just illuminates all the things that I've actually felt about some of my white friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
I think you said it just fine.
Yeah.
If you like him, then
Yeah.
now I feel that you're saying shit about
And
me.
I don't want to say it because I may have some white friends watching it, but I guess I really, really don't care right now. But I just feel like, he always illuminated the suspicion that I've always had, even with some of my closest white cohorts. Like when they're behind closed doors, when they're far away from Jermaine's ear, those things that they can echo because he says them out loud.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it shines a light on them just a little bit, just because they say, "Well, I just don't really mind, and I like his policy." I feel like his policy is more of a cover up for, no, I like who he is, and I like what he wells up inside of me. Things
Right.
that I can't say, he can say it. He'll say it for me.
Right. And
There
Anthony,
you go,
Anthony has the right of it.
Yeah.
He is the embodiment.
Yeah.
And instead of saying, I don't like Black people, you can say, I love Trump.
Right.
And everybody knows what you're saying. Because
Yeah.
one thing about Trump is there's no subtext.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah.
So it's not even confusing. You say
But
less,
even
bro.
that in
Say less.
itself, I feel like was a whole ruse, because I felt like he particularly found that demographic of people and realized, wait a minute, if I can just capitalize on them, maybe I can win this thing. Because I don't think he went into this race knowing that, that subculture of people were going to be the ones that were going to be his base. I don't think he had that foreshadow of thought. I really don't. I feel like he just sort of happened upon it.
He did not want to win, Jermaine.
You don't think so?
No, he didn't want to win. He wanted to increase his brand.
Yeah.
He wanted to.
I felt like he wanted to win because it was a grip for him to make more money. That's what I thought.
But the scrutiny that came with that is not what he wanted. He was used to being an absolute power. He was a dictator at Trump Co. Nobody could tell him what to do. That's what he wanted. You can't be president and do that. There are rules. He thought he was unbound by rules, but he didn't really want to win. He wanted to be able to buy that hotel. He wanted to be able to stock that hotel full of people, And the real problem is that it's just like the people who think, well, the Democrats are keeping me from being a millionaire. No, you're never going to be a millionaire. You're just kind of an idiot. You're not going to be a millionaire. But you can say to yourself, well, I'd be a millionaire if my taxes were lower. All of these people who are trying to inherit Trump's brand and inherit his standard, you're not him.
Yeah.
You want to pretend, or you want to think you could be him, but you're not him. They don't want you. They want him. And until somebody who is as popular or can claim, Vivek thought because of a money thing that he could do it. But Vivek doesn't have the track record of being wealthy. Vivek did a couple of shady deals and got some money. And so that's great. But it's not like 40 years of Trump. 40 years Trump has been a part of the cultural landscape, and Vivek doesn't have Vivek isn't even 40 years old. And look at who's joining us.
Is that Joy?
In the last few minutes of the show.
Hey, Joy.
She is back at her Krisnib. Look at Joy.
Hey, everybody. I also thought that Trump was their first time ever having, this quote unquote leader to follow. We in the Black community, we've always had people that we pretty much were our touchstones. We have Martin Luther King. We've had Rosa Parks. We've always had those iconic figures that we kind of look to as our moral compass, if you will. I felt like Trump was the first time that a lot of these people actually had one.
Well,
because
I mean, Nathan Forrest.
What's that again?
Nathan Forrest.
Who was Nathan Forrest?
Founder of the KKK.
Oh God! Well, you can't openly ascribe to one
Well, I mean,
like him.
Woodrow Wilson did. I mean, I'm
well,
just saying, Richard Nixon wasn't, and even Ronald Reagan. Trump was not their first one. Trump is the most.
I feel like he was. I feel like
Trump is the most ignorant.
Yeah.
And most unabashedly ignorant and anti-intellectual person. So from that perspective,
in my lifetime seeing people respond to Trump the way they did Trump with anybody else. Like, this was my first time actually seeing that phenomenon within, especially the Republican base. I'm like, I don't ever remember seeing that. I mean, there was like this Jim Jones fanfare with them right now with Trump.
No, clearly.
And I've never seen that. So I feel like this is the first time that they've ever had this emotional connection with someone.
Well, a politician, but Chan has the right of it. Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly. Oh, yeah.
Where they would flock to him and just listen to him and just, you think so?
Rush Limbaugh had the #1 show in radio for years. That man was making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, more than enough to buy the OxyContin that turned him deaf. So
it was that fanatical craze.
Absolutely. Ditto heads. They called themselves ditto heads because they'd call into Rush's show, and whatever it was that he was saying, they'd say ditto. Rush Limbaugh.
I just wasn't paying attention.
Well, you probably weren't listening to him. I only listened to
No, I wasn't.
Right. Yeah. Rush Limbaugh was the prototypical archetype of racial animus and extreme right-wing animus unbound. I think Anthony Turner is, and Joy, I'm going to let you're putting up these comments. You might as well be the one to address them. But social media did change things. Well, yeah, I guess. But Strom Thurmond was sleeping with his maid.
I'm just seeing these whole fanatical. It's just the fanaticalism that I'm seeing with Trump right now that I've just never witnessed within them. And I'm like, is this y'all's first time really having a leader that moves you like this? Where there's like this emotional connection?
If Rush Limbaugh had run for office, he could have been a senator in Florida. But Rush Limbaugh didn't want to give up $200 million a year to be a damn senator.
Yeah.
He wanted to be Rush Limbaugh. He didn't care about what he was saying. He was collecting checks.
Yeah.
And Trump decided, F it. I'll spend this money. I'll elevate my brand. I'll lose. And then I'll throw stones at Hillary Clinton for 4 years, except that he won. Right. And that's where he messed up. He should have tried less hard. And then he would have lost.
I guess the parallels for me is the fact that, the way we all responded to Obama, his message of hope. The way we just flocked to his every word and bought his books and wore the t-shirts and things like that. I saw that exact sentiment with regards to Trump. And I was like, so this is who you guys are really, really feeling this emotional connection with. And I'd never seen that before with them because I've always thought that they were somewhat divorced to people like that. They would only follow people to a certain extent, whereas we was, I don't know, it just seemed like that was just my first time witnessing that within that particular group of people.
Well, I think one of the reasons that may be the first time that we witnessed that, at least in this era, is they've always had options. And we very rarely had options. We had one, and we would hang all our hat and hopes on that one. Even when Obama ran, he was the one. Like, he was straight up Neo, for lack of a better, just to make the reference. But if you are part of the white majority in this country, you have not only Republican and Democratic options, but options within those options. You didn't have to have that blind loyalty. But there was such a sentiment of flailing after Obama won, not once, but twice. What is my country coming to? Somebody save me. And then here comes this guy spouting the things that you've been afraid to say at work for the last 8 years. And it, like you said, ever, it hit a connection. And because he was getting away with it, it made them think they could too. And so the difference for me, like, I still have my Obama t-shirt where it looks like he's opening the suit and it's like a super old.
I have my hope shirt.
Yeah. I don't wear it every day. I'm not saying Obama is still my president. I mean, Michelle is my forever FLOTUS, but Obama is former President Obama. They're still hung up on this because they didn't have a plan. They don't know where to go after this. And going back to anything other than this hard right is just anathema to them. Like, they're absolutely not. So They follow him because they don't know where else to go. Yeah. And he gives them an outlet for all of their hate and frustration. What is her name? She was on The View. She said it best. I can't remember her name.
Alyssa?
No, she's somebody's daughter.
Meghan McCain?
Meghan McCain, thank you. Thank you. She said, well, he hates who we hate, and that's why we like him. And so that's different from Obama. To your point, he had a message of hope. He was unifying. Trump was separating, or, he was divisive. Yeah. But if you rock with that, I had this discussion the other day. Kanye West wearing that MAGA hat and talking and doing those interviews with that hat on. He never had anything substantive to say other than, you can't tell me what to do. I wear this hat because you can't tell me what to do. And that was the sentiment that I think is the common denominator around all of those Trump cultist fans. You can't tell me what to do, because for 8 years, they had a Negroid in the White House that was the leader of the free world. He could absolutely tell you what to do. And they were so afraid of what might happen that we get this irrational response, right? Mm-hmm. And but yeah, it's not so much about his policies, about whatever he says what he wants, whatever. It's that you can't tell me what to do. And I think it speaks to their, Johnny Rebel,
right?
Dukes of Hazzard,
just the
freedom.
Two different worlds that they come from. I mean, Trump was extremely wealthy, but his base are these people who are just barely making it.
That's the aspirational thing. It's what I was talking about before. I see Trump, and so hard work, I can be Trump too, even though it's impossible. And Trump doesn't want you to be him. He will pretend that he is waiting for you to occupy his Trump Tower suite.
On several occasions, he's told them he doesn't want to be there. Remember when he said, "I don't like losers," and when John McCain was actually a POW and he made that comment.
Mm-hmm. But see, that's different.
You know what I'm saying?
But that was his opponent. Those people don't see themselves as losers. They see themselves as not yet winners. Right. And there's a big difference.
And they see him as a winner, and they tie their wagon to him. They're winners too by
extension, because I wear this MAGA hat, which means I'm just as much of a winner as Trump because I'm on Team Trump. Sure. And people who are not on Team Trump are the losers, but I'm on Team Trump, so I'm a winner. When we were talking about people like Limbaugh, you have to realize that Limbaugh's rocket ship to fame occurred in that Ronald Reagan era. That's when he started to rise. And so he was not right, and he wasn't honest or truthful, but there was this veneer of intellect behind it. He sounded very rational when he was saying his things. He never sounded as off the rails as Trump, just in an average conversation. Rush Limbaugh positioned himself as the smartest guy in the room.
He was just more shock jock to me. Like, I never took what he said to be.
That's not. But that is his army of followers did not consider him. Howard Stern is a shock jock. Rush Limbaugh was a right wing ideologue.
So maybe I just didn't understand who he really was.
He could have very easily any political office he wanted.
Wow, that scares me.
Because Mike Pence arose out of the same sort of impetus that, he was riding the Rush Limbaugh wave. Bill O'Reilly was riding the Rush Limbaugh thing. Rush isn't the best looking dude in the world. Neither was Bill O'Reilly, frankly, but Rush is morbidly obese and addicted to painkillers. So he was comfortable. He tried to have a regular show, but he ended up being much more comfortable in his little box in his house, in his basement, doing his show. And he had a camera on, but I mean, you couldn't turn the 6 hours that he was on the Excellence
he was like he was on the radio all day long.
Yeah.
No, that's how you indoctrinate people.
Yeah.
He was not a shock jock. He was right-wing proto-Fox before Fox became Fox. All of the people who became Fox celebrities in that first wave were people who were talk show personalities in the mold of Rush Limbaugh. And so he really kind of created that right-wing radio template that created the right-wing intelligentsia, for lack of a better word, sphere,
the anger outlets
chamber. And when Fox came in and shot that heroin directly into their veins, there was no turning back.
Sure.
And they've created, and all of their icons who have fallen, let's be clear, Tucker Carlson has fallen. The #1 rated person on Fox News is now on X, formerly known as Twitter. It's not the same.
So Rush ran so Fox could sprint.
Well,
yeah,
and that's the honest truth. And so that's where we are as far as he was literally, Paul. I mean, without question. And just because I'm interested in getting Mark Stepney drunk, let's be clear. Without Rush Limbaugh, you would not have had the virulent state of hyper-partisanship in this country. Rush was the guy who started that. I mean, inherited perhaps from Lee Atwater, but with the broadcast and the ability to broadcast and to be on radio basically 24 hours a day, but certainly new content 6 hours a day, every day. That's what created the fertile soil that allowed all of these other shoots to kind of come up. So
was he a response to something?
Wait, just one more. Let's be clear, Mark. It's time for you to drink again.
But was he a response to something, Rush Limbaugh? Like, how did he even come into prominence? Like, was it a response to Clinton, or like what was he?
No. He's pre-Clinton. He
wasn't a response to anything. He was an evolution of something.
Right.
Oh, okay.
He was an evolution of Lee Atwater with more charisma and a speaking voice made for radio. When Clinton came in office, that's when he took
dog with a bone.
Yeah.
He took off with Clinton and carried that energy. And you know, because he was no particular fan of W, but he did ride the pro-American wave. Didn't have to like W because W was an idiot, and he was certainly smarter than W. But you couldn't talk trash about America because now I can talk about the Muslims who attacked America. Yeah. So he was able to effortlessly transition into the next thing, so it worked. And more like kudzu. I don't know that poison ivy, but kudzu definitely. If you're from the South, kudzu will take over everything. And that's what Rush did. He planted that first plant, and baby, you couldn't do anything since.
Yeah, you make a good point, Chan. Even though thought it was like a right-wing Daily Show. To your point about that, I think it was a sleeper cell. I think a lot of us were like, who would take that seriously? That's so ridiculous. Oh my God, 80 million people just voted for Trump. I don't think, again, the complacency of the minority groups who, when everything got passed in the 60s, we started thinking we had overcome. We got all little TV shows, people got a good little job, we got a little perm and everything. And we thought we were good, right? We thought we had fully assimilated and been accepted.
We got
always talk about, white folks changed in the 90s. No, they didn't. They've never changed. We stopped thinking that they were serious. Yeah. And they always have been.
Well, they've always been good at playing the long game.
Yes.
Yeah, they've always been good at that. And that's something.
But let's be clear. The South is still trying to rise again.
Yeah.
Take that shot.
That's right. Shout out. All right. We have one more thing to talk about. Now that Joy is here, it's good that she's here because our last segment for the day is about receipts.
Oh my God.
So
I'm on the fence with this chick, guys.
Why are you on the fence? Why are you on the fence with her?
Because have you read the book? Because I've read some excerpts from the book, and it's nothing is definitive. Nothing is. Even after the 6th, she was still on board with Trump. She was actually getting ready to move with him to Mar-a-Lago. It took her mom, and her mom wasn't even successful in trying to get her to see that this man was not good for the country. And she never even detailed in the book, in my opinion, what actually turned the light on to where she moved away from him. So I just don't understand. She kept mentioning it was his policies. Once again, it was his policies. I feel like it was more of this daddy figure, if you ask me. I don't know. I feel like there was just something that she saw in him that she didn't get in her upbringing. And that she sort of hung on to and just like, projected that onto him, but just use everything else as, this, framework for as to why she was really, really behind him. There was nothing definitive in the book. It just wasn't. I wish she just would have stopped at her testimony and left it at that.
I will say this. I am aware, I haven't taken the time to read it. I am aware that there is some additional context in some things that had previously not been reported that she raises to offer a little bit more insight into some of the things that happened in the aftermath, which is fine. If she's opportunistic and that opportunism helps to get him some jail time or some conviction or whatever, I don't care. Go on ahead and be opportunistic. You think I care? You're a young white woman with no job. Get paid, whatever. Take him down. Now, I will say that they probably need to fire the artist who airbrushed this cover because, man, that's giving
a disgruntled news anchor.
Yeah, no, not even disgruntled news anchor.
It's giving Demi Moore as a housewife.
Bam! Thank you. That's who it is.
It's the hair. It's two helmets.
The dark hair, the pale skin, the thin features. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Demi Moore. Okay, yeah.
Speaking of those revelations, she did drop some nuggets. When she actually stated in the book that Mark Meadows said that they killed Herman Cain, I was like, wow, that's revelatory.
Oh, that's another thing she said. She said that Trump was actually near death with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I knew that.
Oh, we all knew it.
Mm-hmm.
But for her to, listen.
To confirm it.
Mm-hmm. You give me my little news nuggets and my little buzz phrases and my little sound bites. That's all I need.
Yeah.
I want
that's
you to
what
build
I liked
a
about
wall.
the book. She confirmed a lot of things that we often thought were going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I really wonder, like, what was the final thought on Herman Cain's, passing? Like, did they really it would come to the conclusion that they may have had a hand in him dying when he did. And when she said that Mark Meadows, admitted that, I was like, I kind of wondered about that. I did. She even said that at one point, like during the whole January 6th thing leading up to it, she goes, those days that led up to it, she goes, it felt like every other day in the White House. That chaos that was going there, she said it was just like every other day. So she didn't really sense the urgency of anything that was getting ready to happen because that chaotic nature was just always complacent within the White House.
Right.
I thought that was very telling.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a gnat in here. That's why you see me waving. I don't know where this gnat is coming from. It's annoying.
I thought it was very telling that Matt Gaetz claimed that they dated. And she quickly tossed that into the ash bin. She said, we were friends. We were good friends at one point, which
she's like, let me be clear. He never hit this.
Mark, don't ever do that again, Mark.
Right? You thought we wasn't going to play? I came in late and started playing.
Mark going to be like, dude, I'm sorry.
It's always a win when white women are on the right side, of history. But, this, I guess it is really.
First of all, how do you do that, Chad, in Facebook?
I want to know that Ja Rule Amorosa.
How does he do that? Is that an option in Facebook?
I feel like you copied and pasted that. That was kind of awesome. I like that. I'm gonna have to try that.
Oh, that must be a cut and paste. Yeah. You smart. You important.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like when they do the right thing and they just want to make them heroes. I'm like, that doesn't make you a hero. It just makes you a solid, good person with good reasoning for a change. Something broke through.
Well, the title of the book is enough. You can read it or not read it. Joy, since you have joined us and we kind of skipped over the debates, is there anything that you would like to say about the debates before the police break down Jermaine's door?
My window is open because it's hot.
Poor baby.
He said it's hot.
I'm sure y'all did it to death. I don't think I have anything revelatory
we didn't really talk about it.
We kind of danced over it.
We didn't even watch it. We're just talking about the highlights that we saw.
Well, what I will say is that there is a super clip. You can look it up. It's the GOP debate in 90 seconds. And basically all it is them shouting on top of each other. It was madness. Vivek and Tim are getting into it. Tim and Nikki are getting into it. Tim was trying to turn into the angriest black virgin ever in the history of black virgins who were 50. It was just very combative.
You know what Scott is? Do you remember that guy that kept buying dances from Diamond in the Players Club, and then he followed her home, and he's like, "You owe me." I spent a lot of money on you, Diamond.
Oh my God.
That's how he feels about the GOP
you
right
turned
now.
Tim Scott into a character from the Players Club.
With the polo stuff into the khakis.
I kind of knew he was going to come out swinging with this debate because, you know, they have really, really gone after him since the last one, you know, with the alleging that he might be a homosexual, you know, this fake girlfriend that nobody can verify.
Tim,
okay, you're still clapping that gnat.
Are you having gnats where you are? Because they're like hatching everywhere in LA County.
Chan, I'm
with you on the gnats. I'm with you on the gnats, Jermaine.
No, I hate plant flies, whatever.
Yeah, it's seasonal. They're gonna be around.
They were hatching like crazy.
Put bleach down all your drains and let it sit for about 10 minutes and then run hot water. Because sometimes they're living in the drains in your sinks.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do that.
Yeah.
Chan had 2 bangers in the last 45 seconds. The Ja Rule Omarosa thing, and then can I wear my hug?
Talking about Tim, where my hug at, Scott? Because I know that dude. I know I went to college with that dude. He's at my church. Where my hug at?
All right. We are at the 1.5 hour mark, which is a good show. I thought we had a very good show today.
We really did.
I'm so proud of y'all for holding it down without me.
I'm gonna take Cassie.
We did the best we could without you, Joyride.
It was a great show. Jermaine was keeping me on.
When does he not? Jermaine's more prepared than I am.
Well, I had a few little missteps. You guys saw that my mayor of my hometown is becoming a Republican now, right?
You ain't.
What is the purpose behind that,
asshole?
It's really interesting. Well, what it is, he understands that. You know Texas guys. It's really kind of hard to ascend in Texas if you're like.
Are all 3 of us Texans?
Yeah, we are.
So, yeah.
Am I just now realizing that?
Yeah, I'm from the Northeast Texas area. I'm a Dallasite. You're
Houston,
and you're from where?
I'm from the southeast corner, Beaumont.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Houston, Beaumont, Dallas.
Little scalene triangle.
But he's obviously gunning for a different office, and it's kind of hard to win, in Texas unless you are Republican because they are so ruby red. The only reason why he won in Dallas is because Dallas is just hardcore blue. In fact, all the metropolitans are blue, but it's just all that rural area just makes up the difference from all the numbers in the metropolitan area.
So it could be a very canny decision depending on how he plays it. If you run as a Republican, you pick up a lot of blind voters, meaning that they're voting for the R,
Right.
And if you run as a Republican, but present yourself as moderate and are able to maintain relationship with enough neutrals and Democrats to where they realize that you might be not necessarily a Trojan horse, but you might be an actual moderate, there's a chance he can win. You can't do that on the Democratic side because the blind Republicans will never vote for a D, but some D will vote for an R if they feel like he's got something to say. But
I feel like it shoots to the heart of his character. I mean, that's like, he's just got elected this past, May? And now you're going to decide to do this?
Yeah,
you knew what you was doing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it could be a big switch in the other direction.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't. That's what I don't like. I don't.
Like
I really don't respect
bullshit.
that. And I don't know what I mean because he can't run against Cruz because Cruz is running and Colin Allred is running against Cruz. So that means you're going to try to maybe run 4 years from now.
Yeah.
Against the other guy who was just elected. I mean, I just don't. I don't get it, and I just don't think it's honest, and I don't think you get reelected to this position. And if you don't get reelected to this position, then are you really setting yourself up? You're going to go to be a congressperson, maybe? You're going to try to. How are you going to do that if Dallas is anchored in blue voters?
Hardcore. Like you
That's
just
what I'm
lost the
saying.
whole electorate right there.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't understand what the strategy is. Statewide, I could see it, to your point, that because you're a Republican, you want to go statewide. The only option you have is to, I mean, if you want to go outside of the state, I mean, I guess you could run for Secretary of State or whatever, but it's not like white folks ain't also running for them offices.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to run for Senate, you've got deeply entrenched Ted Cruz. I forget who the other dude is. But I just don't see how lying to voters is going to get that done for you.
I feel like there needs to be either legislation or some kind of penalty, because that's happening a lot more often than what we're saying in this particular conversation. It happened in Georgia. What's that sister in Georgia that did that?
Yeah. Yes. And she was a hot mess and nobody was checking for her.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can do that. Like, as much as it's galling, I don't think we can penalize people for switching parties.
It's very deceiving.
The parties should be fluid. Like, you know, as much as they hate fluidity, the parties should actually be fluid. I mean, that's how we ended up with the Dixiecrats becoming the modern day Democrats and having Black people move into that category, and the Republicans turn into the old South. Like, things change, and if there's a penalty for switching, I don't think it would deter anybody anyway. If you,
or maybe you just sit out the next election and then come back as a different person. Maybe that could be the answer.
I think that's a good thing from a PR and image standpoint. But again, I don't think we can dictate that. Like, you made a choice and you have to stick with it. Like,
no, I guess my point is that what happened since May?
Nothing.
That turned you from your party. What in Texas? What happened in Texas?
Now that is something that I think we could get with, going back to what Jermaine is saying about some sort of penalty. If you decide to switch, what's your renunciation statement? Why are you switching? I want that to be public. Tell me why you're moving. Right. Give me a reason. Yeah.
And agree to sit out for a whole election cycle and then come back as this newfound identity and run that way. But you just can't all of a sudden just switch it. You know what I'm saying? I don't like that. It's very deceptive.
No, it is.
I think that if I feel like the reason that he gave is because he said that because crime and all the homicide is down, there were some other things that he listed. He said because the Republicans are the reasons why it's down, because all these like big cities are ran by these Democratic people. He feel like that because it was just muddy. I'm like, well, if you're a Democrat and crime is down in your particular city, doesn't that make you look good as a Democrat?
Right.
And why are you giving all the freaking, accolades to Republicans when you're actually running the city and the numbers are down and you're running and you're like in the position as a Democrat? So it just
drug trafficking and drug trafficking, theft and drug abuse is up in these rural areas where the Republicans are.
Well, that'll never make the news.
It's because he a lie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He didn't say nothing about fentanyl because they're using fentanyl like crazy in Dallas County right now.
Yo, they're starting to shoot fentanyl here. There's some combination of fentanyl and something else. I forgot what they call it. It's like, it wasn't crank.
Yeah. Death?
It was what? Death, yes. But
death? Never wake up?
But I mean, it's just like
make this a racial issue. But how come we as Black folks are sort of out of that conversation with regards to fentanyl?
Regards to what?
Fentanyl. Like, I'm not hearing a bunch of Black people ODing and strung out.
Well, we smoke weed. We don't need fentanyl.
We don't need no fentanyl, Letha.
No, really, because it's like we're not in that particular, like the 911 fentanyl is only because white folks are using it. Like if Black folks are using fentanyl.
Yes. Yeah. The reason fentanyl is making the news is because white people use it.
Yeah.
And after putting hundreds of thousands of Black men in prison for smoking a little weed, now white children are selling it all over the place. We got little dispensaries and little corner pop-up stores. Get your CBD here and all that kind of stuff. Because it's been what's the word I'm looking for? Commoditized, and we live in a capitalist society, so they're cool with it now. But heroin, when smack was out there, so we called it white horse, whatever you want to call it, heroin. But fentanyl, Black people haven't really gotten into the prescription drug ring, at least not to any real extent, because again, we're still smoking weed and stealing our children's Ritalin, and so that's kind of where we fall out. I don't think fentanyl is something that we're interested in, because why?
I think from a practical standpoint, why would you mess with something that has a high probability of killing you? Like off rip. Like heroin dealers were dealing heroin to get you to come back. They weren't dealing hot shots to get their customers killed. The fentanyl people, wait,
Really?
what?
Vera, talk more about this if you can.
Yeah, I need to know about this.
Has all black celebrities on fentanyl. What?
That seems like it's orchestrated because I haven't. Yeah,
Lamar
that must be
Odom?
like.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know.
I mean, you got to be testing the bounds.
Yeah.
You know,
I feel like they're trying to reframe the narrative with that commercial because that doesn't seem right.
Because then if depending on who's benefiting from the fentanyl trafficking,
right?
If you can make it about black people, you can get people to stop paying attention to it as a crisis.
Yeah.
So you can keep making your money.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. That's why they differentiated between crack and cocaine.
Right.
Cocaine was for rich white people and crack was for poor black people. So all the sentencing is 2 birds with 1 stone. Your child gets off for, having a pound of cocaine in their backpack. And then the little black boy down the street goes to jail for 10 years for finding a rock on the street. So fill up the jails as well as keep giving a pass to a bunch of cokeheads who are now, guess what, in the Supreme Court.
God, yeah. I tell you, we always know branding.
Okay, so this is interesting. She's talking about they have Prince, they have Coolio. So yeah, there are celebrities that have.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, Michael Jackson, wasn't that fentanyl for him as well?
No, it wasn't. It was propofol, which
you're
is
right.
different. So
and Prince
I don't even think Prince was fentanyl. I think Prince was
opioids. It was a painkiller, wasn't it? It was
I didn't think it was fentanyl. I mean, it could have been. Fentanyl is in the opioid family.
Mm-hmm.
But those are one-offs. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Prince is
the general public, black people are not taking it.
Yeah,
right.
It's just not.
And nobody's talking about celebrity overdoses. Celebrity overdoses have they have different rules.
Yeah,
we're talking about the rank and file people dying of fentanyl.
Yeah,
I think Vera's point is support what we said earlier is that they try to make it seem like it's a black people problem.
Right.
It's really not.
Like I can go down the street to Hollywood Boulevard and I'm going to see a row of these young yuppies just strung out, hanging out, trying to score. So I don't know what they're bungee jumping and skydiving crack. Who all will be? Chan, we need to meet. Where are you?
I know, right?
I love his prayer. Yeah, they are. Mm-hmm. You're right here. They're changing the narrative.
All right. Well, we went from Dallas mayor to Coolio cracked out on fentanyl in the course of
minutes
to the purple one. May he rest in peace.
Yes.
Rest in peace. So I think that's all we have. Maybe
the writers have a deal. We'll close.
Writers have a deal. SAG is going to be meeting.
Do you know the specifics of it? Because they hadn't said shit.
Well, SAG is meeting on Monday.
Yay!
So probably going to use a lot of the infrastructure, kind of the things that the producer has already agreed upon.
Get one audition. That's I went out for a Verizon commercial, and you would have thought it was my first audition ever. I was just a happy, flubbed the lines, but I was happy.
Well, we're gonna send up prayers and blessings for you and your audition schedule.
I just want to get back in front of somebody and just
come on, Jermaine.
Write something for me, Tom. You guys are off strike.
We are off strike. We'll figure it out.
With that, I want to be the best friend to any white person, but anything else you write, I'll do it.
All right. Here we go. With that, I will say, I am Tom Cunningham.
Let me be clear. I am Joy Stevens.
And I am the fledgling actor, Jermaine Taylor.
And this is Let Me Be Clear.